We are back. It is time for Weather for Weather Geeks on this Monday evening, 28th day of December, as we head towards the end of 2020, thankfully. I hope you had a good Christmas holiday, everyone. I've been off for the last week and a half, but the weather certainly was not boring during my time off, so it really wasn't much of a vacation because I had to pay attention to the weather in that run-up to the Christmas storm. The Christmas system behaved pretty much as expected. I would say the forecast, I'd give it a B, B minus. I would say where things maybe weren't great, the timing of the heaviest snow ended up being a little later at night, so we had a little bit more snow on Christmas Day, that calendar day, as opposed to Christmas Eve. It took a little while to get going Christmas Eve, but then we ended up picking up 5+ inches worth of snow at the airport during Christmas Day. But the amounts ended up being pretty good. We've had better snow forecasts, but we've certainly had worse ones, and I'm overall pretty happy with how things went. You may not have been real happy dealing with the snow if you had to be out driving on Christmas Day, but it sure was nice having a very, very white Christmas. It's been a snowy start to the winter season. In fact, we've had twice as much snow so far this season as compared to the same time through today's date last season. 15.5 was the number through the 28th of December last year. This year at the airport, we've picked up 31 inches, and 28.6 of that have occurred in the month of December. That's 15.2 inches above the average, and this makes it our snowiest December since that rollicking winter of December through February 2010 into 2011, in which we had triple-digit snowfall totals at the airport, and December particularly was very, very snowy. We're not going to even sniff December of 2010's snow totals, but this is the most snow since that very, very wintry December 10 years ago. Today was one of those backwards days where our highest temperature occurred at the time of the day in which our low temperature usually occurs. And conversely, our lowest temperatures of the day have occurred when our high temperature usually occurs. It was a windy and mild start to the day. Then temperatures settled into the mid-30s. As of this recording, just a little before 6:30, some snow flurries were on schedule, pushing in, with a little weak disturbance pushing through and a little lake enhancement going on. For the most part, this is all pretty innocuous, but I can't rule out a candy coating here and there, especially if we get into some of these more decent-looking bands. Again, just before 6:30, some of these were coming into Southington along 422, and, especially in areas north of I-80, I'm not going to be surprised if a little candy coating of snow occurs, especially on those non-paved surfaces this evening. As this pushes in, air temperatures are still mostly a little above freezing. Nationwide this evening, actually, most of the action is out west. They've had rain for most of the day in Los Angeles, which isn't especially rare in the middle of winter, but still, and you don't often see a big slug of green coming into Southern California, and showers of rain and snow extend out into the Four Corners. This is actually the system that will make the trip across the country and bring us our next chances for precipitation during midweek. Our snow showers and flurries will be most numerous this evening, fading away as we head through the overnight, and I can't rule out a stray flurry as tomorrow begins, but otherwise, pretty uneventful Tuesday is on the way as high pressure pays us a brief visit. Any sunshine will be fairly ineffective, and clouds will increase again tomorrow evening. Out of a warm front, might be a flurry or two during the wee hours of Wednesday morning, but then as we get into the afternoon Wednesday, shower timing mostly towards sunset. I think we're largely dry through 3 or 4, but shower chances will tend to increase by 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday. Now, this plume of moisture will be mostly in the liquid variety, but as this starts to push away and the colder air starts to return early Thursday morning, there might be a brief period of wet snowflakes. Now, of course, most of us are going to spend the holiday indoors and away from large crowds, hopefully, this year, just like Christmas time. But for your New Year's Eve day on Thursday, I think we're dry, aside from maybe a little bit of snow very early in the day. Most of the day dry as this system kind of reloads a little bit, and this will eventually start coming back north by New Year's Day on Friday. But we'll get a break in the action, it looks like, for most of New Year's Eve day, and actually most of that night as well. But then a pretty good plume of moisture returns for the start of 2021 on Friday. Here's a look at our model spread as far as rainfall totals. 1/2 inch to 1 inch looks to be pretty likely Friday and early into Friday night as well. At the very beginning of the day on Friday, on New Year's Day, as that plume of rain returns, temperatures may be near freezing, so there may be a period of time in which the rain tries to freeze on some surfaces. Might have to watch for a few slick spots early Friday. I think Friday afternoon we'll get up into the 40s with the rainy weather. All right. There's been a lot of model noise, if you will, of late, dealing with some of the high latitude stuff going on in the atmosphere, high latitudes and also high altitudes. We're talking about a potential for the polar vortex to kind of split as we go into the middle of winter. Sometimes when the polar vortex splits, you get cold air spilling down into the mid-latitudes. Some of it can be pretty intense. The mid-latitudes, though, sometimes that means Europe, not necessarily the mid-latitudes of North America. Anyway, there's been a lot of talk about that kind of thing maybe occurring as we get into midwinter, but here across the eastern United States, not seeing any signs of any sort of Arctic cold sustaining itself through the first week, maybe 10 days of January. I agree with the CPC outlook this evening, showing elevated odds of warmer than average temperatures in that 8 to 14 day period. That being said, I think there'll be ample chances for precipitation early in January, and if we can get the precipitation to sync up with brief shots of cold, then yeah, you can get some snow. But for the most part, the milder than average days should outnumber the colder than average days as we go into early January. Fitting a theme over the last few years. And in tomorrow and Wednesday evening's editions of Weather for Weather Geeks, I'm going to get more into the year in review, 2020. But just looking back at the last 3 years, you can see that the number of warmer than average months has easily outnumbered the cooler than average months. In fact, in 2019 and 2020, we've had 4 out of 24 months cooler than average. 20 of 24 have been warmer than the average. And in 2020, only April has been appreciably cooler than average. May was just slightly cooler than average, but only April has been significantly cooler than average. And even that wasn't anything to write home about. It was just, it kind of stands out considering the rest of the year has been warmer than average. And that includes December. It's been a snowy month. We've had some cold days, but the overnight low temperatures have been mostly elevated thanks to a pretty cloudy month. So we haven't had a lot of days in which, when you factor in the highs and the lows, the average temperature for the entire day being significantly colder than average has not occurred that often in December. So it's going to end up being a few degrees warmer than average this month, despite a fair amount of snow. That'll do it for me tonight on Weather for Weather Geeks. Again, more of a year in review coming up tomorrow and Wednesday. We'll talk more about the end of the week system and much more. Future editions of the Valley's most in-depth weather forecast.